last topic for today under this topic of physical traumas to our nerve system is research that's going on, I'm going to call it adaptability. That was a piece of the conversation that came up earlier, that the nerve system is about adaptability, that we're measuring the nerve system's ability to adapt, to respond to environmental stresses, et cetera. And I know that a lot of you use SEMG and other activities. You know, BJ way back in was with the NCM and the neurocalligraph was trying to record heat patterns and things along the spine, et cetera. And that technology continues to evolve. So I want to bring up someone who not only develops equipment, not only understands and has done the research, but goes out and defends chiropractors in courts all over the United States, all over the world, to make sure that people understand, as Ryan pointed out, what we understand that they don't understand. My good friend, David Marcarian.
Thank you very much.
Do you have your own thing?
Okay, thanks. So do you hear me?
Yeah.
Is there sound? Yes. I love what Rob talked about. I love what everybody talked about. I'm going to address some of the stuff that Rob was discussing. And also, the person that gets blamed when you get angry at me is Guy, because he told me in 2000, David, just tell the truth, all right? So I give you the responsibility for that.
Whenever I stop, the car shakes. Now, a couple of days ago, I was coming down this...
Put your hand here. Brakes. Rotors. Calipers. It's the calipers, it's okay.
Roy! Calipers! Don't you want to take out some tools or something?
That's not how we do things here. Don't worry about it.
Roy!
That's not natural.
I mean, how do you beat that? The truth is, would you take your car, anyone ever take the car to the mechanic? Yes, you would. And I'm not knocking AK, I'm just trying to make sure you understand how this mechanic would be perceived. So it's really important for us to get some of the ideas that Rob was talking about across in a manner that is understandable. And even now, we live in this very data-driven society. If you have a BMW or any car, and there's a problem with it, they're not going to fix it without plugging in a device and getting a code. You know that, right? They won't pay for the warranty for it. So we become a very extremely gigantic data-driven world. And my goal for the last 25 years is convergence. And I've been attacked like crazy for this, but bringing the MD, the DC, the world together to understand what you do as chiropractors, okay? And I wanted to do that through objective data. Does that make sense? That's how we're going to convince people, especially in a data-driven world. I mean, everything we do right now is data-driven. Yes, everything is data-driven. As far as my background, just so you know, I was with the space program. I was at NASA, very lucky to get in that program. And I was studying muscle fatigue in pilots, so I learned about service EMG way in the beginning of it. It was very difficult to do at the time. The lab was gigantic. When I was 26, I drank a few beers, and I sent a proposal off. You know, 100% of the balls you don't swing at never make it over the fence, right? So I sent this proposal in, and believe it or not, at 27 years old, was awarded a $500,000 grant to design and build a MyoVision. And so it was unbelievable to me, but I built the thing under budget and time-wise, and I showed it one time. And a chiropractor, anyone know who Bill McIlvaine is? Did you ever know him? Bill McIlvaine? Bill was one of the first people. He was arrested in New York State for practicing medicine without a license. He called me up and he said, David, I think this would work for chiropractors. And I said, I have no idea. I've only worked with extremities. And the only knowledge I had of chiropractic was my next door neighbor, who was a chiropractor and drove a GTO. And so I thought chiropractors were the people that drove cars really fast. And that was it. He'd throw us in the back of the car all the time we'd go. But I went to his office and I measured, and I saw that the muscle tension state about the spine correlated completely with their spinal issues, with their subluxation. Does that make sense? Of course it does. It totally makes sense. Yes, I would love to mic my tie. My tie has a lot to say. And then I went to court in Florida. It's a huge case that's been hidden for a lot of reasons, and I won establishing the validity of, and I'll explain why that was a critical case for chiropractic, because it was. I have about 50 international patents, and I want to remind you that all I did was go back to the past to find out what to do, basically. Did anyone read this, the paper that BJ wrote in 1938? You read this whole thing? You know, it's amazing. A student asked me to read it for content. He knew what he was doing. He really understood this. And the electroencephalograph, anyone can say it? I'll give you 20 bucks. 20 bucks, you got it. Okay, cool. Guy, it doesn't count, but you got it. So the point is that he was doing back in 1938 stuff that we aren't even doing today. And why? It's unbelievable. So the neuroclirometer, the thing that's important here is, you know, we have this limit, 5 to 7%, we're not getting beyond, we're not reaching out beyond. Nobody wants to deal with the reality of that, but I want to, and that's why you're probably going to be mad at me about what I say, but I want this to help you. I'm not here to, I want to solve this problem. So in 1935, we were number 1 as alternative healthcare. Do you know all that? Is everyone aware of this? And we have not had an increase since then, we've had a decrease. Now, anyone seen the current Gallup poll? Again, this is for prescriptive purposes. And Palmer spent a lot of money on it, and the truth is I called Gallup that for 2 years they hid this as part of that, I don't know if you knew that, but they hid this as part of the deal they had with Gallup. But we literally are at 38%. This is, do you like this? Do you want to solve this problem? Yes? We need to solve this problem right away. The whole thing of reaching out to people, we have to get them to understand what we're talking about. And the way I see doing it is going back to what BJ said. In 1938, medical men complained because chiropractors are not scientific. They demand laboratory proof. Having proved that we are using their own devices against them, all right? They whine because we do. The key is scientific instruments with scientific means in a scientific manner. The last word will be incontrovertible. This is 1938. How many of us today are using instrumentation in our practices? Good. We need everyone using instrumentation in the practice. How else are we going to convey to the public, to patients, to everyone what it is we do? So the Dynarama is a tool that I patented, and what it does is it measures muscle activity and range of motion simultaneously, so you can see the muscle guarding response that occurs in motion. It's currently the gold standard. It's in the AMA's book. You can't pay for that stuff. I was berated for this for the longest time, and because of the fact that somehow the AMA acknowledging a chiropractic tool is the best tool there is was a bad thing. I don't get that. Does anybody understand why? They're acknowledging what we do as being valuable. But the point is, this is exactly what BJ was talking about. Their tools against them. So I created this. There was a plan behind it. So let's see why this works so well. Range of motion has been the standard up to this point. So here we have the patient bending in a flexion, completely normal range of motion, right? Now let's take a look, 74 degrees. Let's look at her flexion relaxation response. When you bend forward, your muscles are supposed to shut off because you're hanging off ligaments. So you can see the bottom half of the graph is range of motion. The top half is muscle guarding. You can see there's significant guarding when she bends forward. Even though her range is normal, she's got significantly guarding. So this is a case where legally the chiropractor had the ability now to go forward, treat the patient, take care of her, solve the problem because the data supported the position. All right? Normal and abnormal. It's that easy to do. And this case ended up at $260,000 from zero. All right? Do you think service EMG is junk science? Go ahead and say yes. Everybody thinks it is, right? Yep, you do. Well, guess what? That is an unfortunate byproduct of a bunch of things. The reality is it's not junk science. That needle EMG is the gold standard. There's currently 2,235 studies on needle EMG and 10,881 studies on service EMG. The problem is, in 1990, it's historical, people sold junk to the chiropractic profession that didn't work. And everybody went out there billing it as needle EMG. They developed a really bad reputation because none of the machines really worked. Now, if you use a machine that works well, it's the exact opposite. The problem was we had terrible machines out there, and then insurers took advantage of this and started pointing out that static EMG on the left is the only measurement that exists when there's actually motion EMG. And everyone throws them in the same bucket as service EMG. There's static and there's dynamic. So it's important to realize that. The question of the validity went to the Supreme Court of Florida. The case was myself as the only expert to represent the chiropractic profession. Nobody else showed up. And the state was saying this was not a valid tool for diagnosing soft tissue injury. Now, the real goal was, and they were successful with massage therapists. You know what happened in Florida with massage therapists? They were removed from PI. They weren't allowed to bill for PI. They were trying it. If they won in Florida, you would never be able to see a PI patient ever. That's what this case was really about. But they had 9 expert witnesses, 300 insurance companies, state of Florida, and I won on the lower court level Superior Court and the Supreme Court rejected the appeal. But this set the stage so that you can take those cases. Now, one of the things that's really important, cardiologists, would you respect a cardiologist that didn't use an EKG? Would you get anywhere if you're a cardiologist without an EKG? No. That's why they use EKGs. They don't just use a stethoscope, they use an EKG because they have objective data that allows them to take control of the situation and take care of their patients. So as far as the MyoVision, it's using EKG technology, okay? So we're measuring summation and depolarizations. These little areas here, the measurements are in microvolts, millionths of a volt, and we're looking at the muscular guarding that occurs in response to pain and spinal subluxation. There's two types. Remember, it's very important. It's not just surface EMG. There's static on the right side, which is taking a quick measure, and it shows you levels of muscle tension. The bars are proportional to level of tension. The percent difference is up there is the difference between left and right side. The EP stress score is a single number, which is the sum of all the activity about the spine. That's been used at the VA hospital specifically for opiate. Believe it or not, this has been used specifically to eliminate opiates from various patients because we can establish whether or not they're really in pain or not. The dynamometer is on the left side, and it measures muscle activity and range of motion simultaneously. And it only makes sense, right? There's so many patients you see have normal range of motion, but muscle guarding and pain, right? Now we can prove it objectively because we're documenting it. But think of the static EMG as a stethoscope, and all we're doing is we're touching the skin, getting a quick reading of muscle activity, and working down the spine. You have to do it standing to do it properly because a seated test, University of Michigan established a seated test is basically an ergonomic study of the chair. You want to stress the patient and see how their body maintains itself and look at the muscular compensation standing because it's more of a stress test. It makes sense. We also do dynamic EMG. Now this is something that, Ryan, will be very cool for you. What we're doing here is we're measuring muscle activity and video so you can see exactly what's going on with the patient. This is a ballerina. We've been doing this for many years now in various hospitals. And you can see that as soon as we see a compensatory firing, that you're going to see when she turns around, she has problems with one leg, that her one side fires, the right side there fires independent of the left, and it shouldn't. So we established the problem objectively. It was very cool. So it's a lot of the mirroring stuff you're talking about. The patient can see it. We all know that that's the case. Now, this is really important. The VA hospital, they use the static EMG and dynamic, but they established that this correlated completely with the VAS score. And they used it to take people off opiates. When they found the readings were completely normal and the people were saying that they were in pain, this was able to establish that they were not in pain. So it's a very powerful tool. Imagine you go to the VA locally and you offer to perform tests for the VA to establish whether or not patients are actually in pain or not. You can do that. The electronic form of palpation you get out of the static EMG, and it does work really well if you use good machines, is that you're going to see high levels of activity, which is hypertonic. Super low could be muscles that are in a contracture state because they've been firing so long that they're actually shut off. They bulk up and shorten. So, move forward. Okay, there's a control group study. This was done at the VA hospital specifically, where they showed that single number was dramatically different between the two, statistically significant different, and in both static and dynamic. And the key is, most people don't want to work in the personal injury arena. Who needs you more than those that are injured in work accidents or auto injury? Really, seriously. Who is more subluxated than them? They need heroes. They need someone to take care of them. But you got to be able to prove objectively there's a problem. So the problem with all this PI stuff at this point is it's a dirty game. And what I wanted to do was clean it up by having solid objective data. And that's what this provides you with. So when you're doing this test and you're able to show it, you don't actually have any trouble getting paid. You don't have any problems with the insurers because of the fact that I've established in the courtroom that it works so well. But what makes you the kings and queens of that niche market? Anybody know? What do you do differently than everybody else? You touch people. You touch them. No other practitioner is doing that. There is no other, MDs don't do it, PTs don't do it. It gives you a special place here where you're able to really communicate with patients. You have everything you need to take care of these patients.
Insurance company benefits from all these tests because it allows the defense doctor to say, I've looked at the x-ray no evidence of injury. I've looked at the MRI, no evidence of injury. I've looked at the CT scan, no evidence of injury. I've looked at the range of motion finder, no evidence of injury. Therefore, I conclude that there is no objective verification of the patient's subjective complaints, and therefore I conclude that there is no evidence of injury. They're willing to ignore whatever the injured person says because of the absence of objective verification, substantiation, or corroboration. The Dynarom is different because the Dynarom has much higher sensitivity than the range of motion finders. The Dynarom can show that there's an injured muscle that's firing at an inappropriate time, even if the patient's range of motion is 100% completely normal. So the Dynarom shows that the injury exists in a way that is not demonstrated by the X-ray, the CT, the MRI, or the range of motion finder, or any other technology of which I'm aware.
That's what gives us so much power, is that's where it is right now. Everyone has acknowledged it in the legal arena. And the other thing I really think is really valuable about objective data, one thing I don't want to hear anymore, I'm not a chiropractor, so what happens is all the patients, prospective patients that are they're trying to be sold things, your care plans, all this stuff, that's fine. But the reality is they're complaining about that kind of stuff. I would love a world without having to have scripts, without having to oversell, because I think we do too much overselling in this profession. And I get the feedback from those patients who won't tell you that. And by using objective data, the data can speak for you. You don't have to oversell. You can just let it do the data. Now, there was this Rand Corporation did a study on communicating with patients and getting them engaged in their care, and that led to me developing the e-scan. And what that does is when you're done with doing a test on a patient, you send it right to their phone. And it's a great way to communicate with them and reinforce the message that you had. All right? And I designed this specifically for my chiropractor friends who said nobody remembers anything I say. So they receive it in 10 seconds. It's done via email. It's incredibly effective. And the amazing part to me is in beta testing, the number of female patients that said, their husbands were asking, why are you still seeing the chiropractor? They'd forwarded this to their husband. And Matt Brown, as an example, in Seattle, said that 35% of his male patients came from their wives forwarding this to the husband, and the husband going, what is it? I want it done.
It's a really tough thing to deal with L&I claims when you go into the IME, and they do just kind of a range of motion and lightly touch you and ask you very limited questions, and then they want to close your claim, and you really feel like you're just like not being, taken seriously. And it's a tough thing, and then they want to just get you right back to work as soon as you can. So to have a device like that actually talked about my soft tissue, that it actually is in pain and I'm constantly in pain, was so validating. I can't even tell you. I think I even got teary about it because, you start to feel like no one believes you, but you're always in pain. So
this went to court, and do you imagine how she felt about her chiropractor after winning $1.2 million this is recently. So the reality is, without data, they wanted to offer $25,000. Now, one of the things I think this also fixes, you were talking about defining who we are as chiropractors. What I have seen happen when people use objective data, it doesn't matter what technique you use. When I see the Constead guy meet the activator guy, they say, hey, I love you, you're a chiropractor. Hey, I love you, you're a chiropractor. I'm on the outside looking in. And when they turn around, they go, he's an idiot, he's an idiot. They don't really communicate with each other well enough. Instead of saying, hey, let's learn from each other, we actually fractionalize ourselves and make it worse. One of the cool things about objective data, it brings all these groups together. One of the docs in Seattle did the best job of explaining it to me. He was seeing a patient, and he was an upper cervical practitioner. When you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So what is he doing? He's doing the exact same technique on everybody. Aren't we all different? At NASA, it was hammered into us that individual differences are the norm. He told me he bought the machine because he kept losing patients. He bought it to impress patients. And a year later, he said, the thing that happened was it made me a better doctor. I started finding out that what I was doing and thinking I was helping people wasn't working on everybody. So I started customizing my treatment to each patient based on their needs. Does that not make sense? The value of this data then brought him from someone who believed in one technique to one who realized everybody's different, and he applied what he knew more effectively for each patient. That's the other value of having objective data. It's very powerful for that purpose. The other thing is that it reduces emotional the support you get from it's amazing. The stress they have, especially soft tissue cases, where nobody believes them. It's completely intangible. And when you're able to show on a screen that you've got significant problems that are real, I have seen 85% of the patients I see, they literally cry when they see their test next to a normal. And it's amazing because they're finally been relieved of it. They're not an imposter.
I want my doctor to give me more than just their opinion.
We want to be able to get the patients so they're actually seeing data. And then, you know what it does? It puts them in control of their care too and gets them engaged. So we call it the EKG for spinal health. Any questions, you want to see any studies, you can email me at david@myovision.com. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dave.